So I know it's been about 2 weeks since my last video that I uploaded. I'm actually in my new place at the moment, and it's not quite up to snuff as to where I want it to be yet, but yeah, I wanted to jump on here and talk about some of the recent development that's been going on around the L-Mount Alliance. It looks like Blackmagic Design might be joining the L-Mount Alliance. Now, I don't know this for sure. These are rumors, just so you know. But it is pretty exciting to think about, because I think it would be a great benefit for all the manufacturers involved. Just my opinion. But yeah, I think that Blackmagic clearly would benefit from the fact that the L mount also can utilize the EF mount with the Sigma MC11 adapter. MC21 adapter. The MC11 is for the Sony E mount. But yeah, I think that it only makes sense considering the fact that a lot of the L-mount cameras, like the new Panasonic S5 Mark II, which I'm shooting with, and the Panasonic S5 Mark II X, and I think even the Sigma FP, they can all shoot Blackmagic RAW externally. I think it makes sense, and I know that with Blackmagic, most of their cameras, I think some of their higher end cameras use PL mounts, but most of their cameras use EF glass. And clearly, you know, Blackmagic realizes that the prosumer market is moving to mirrorless, and they got to pick a mount to jump to. Well, I think that Canon obviously wasn't going to let them jump to the RF mount. I think they've been doing a pretty big job gatekeeping that that mount. I think only Red is really the other manufacturer that has access to that mount. So I don't see Blackmagic joining Canon in the RF mount. What I do think is the L mount really is a good home for Blackmagic. Now, Sony, I don't think would have let Blackmagic use the E mount. I think Sony's doing pretty good with the E mount. I don't see them needing Blackmagic to join. I think the L mount would really benefit from it, because I think there's a lot of users out there that would be interested in jumping into the Blackmagic ecosystem if they could use their L-mount glass interchangeably. And I think a lot of Panasonic users, you know, Panasonic isn't really a leader in the full frame space. So having, you know, the option to go with a future Blackmagic Design L-mount camera in your arsenal as well is probably a pretty welcome feature for a number of Panasonic users. I don't think that necessarily will get phase detect in some of these new Blackmagic L-mount cameras. I know that obviously Panasonic is trying to address that with the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X, but we'll see what Blackmagic has in store. I couldn't complain if they tried to, but most of the Blackmagic cameras that are out there, I'm pretty sure none of them have any robust autofocus features, and I don't anticipate any future ones, or at least in the immediate future, having phase detect autofocus. But hey, one could be surprised. I do think that it would be interesting to see what some of these rumors are iterating to with a FX3, FX30 style Blackmagic camera that uses the L mount. I think that would be awesome. I think also the potential for even like a box style camera like the Panasonic BS1H, or I think it's the BG1H. No, I forget what it is, but I know there's the BS1H, which is like an S1H box style cinema camera that also can be used for like live streaming with a whole bunch of different connections like Genlock, SDI. I would love to see something like that in a Blackmagic camera on the L mount, or even Panasonic just releasing a future one with phase detect autofocus. But I guess I'm going off on a tangent there. I would love to see a Blackmagic Design FX3, FX30 style body with the L mount. I think it would be a really, really cool camera. I think it would have a lot more people looking at the L mount as a whole, and I think it would entice people who might not be quite in the mirrorless space yet to maybe even look at the L mount as a viable option. Obviously, the L mount is nowhere near the level of the Sony E mount or even the Canon. Well, the Canon RF mount, I mean, they've got a lot of really nice glass, but it isn't as robust in terms of just the size of lenses that you have. Obviously, you can adapt EF glass, but I think that Panasonic still needs to introduce more glass into the L mount. And I think Sigma introduces a lot of their art and sport series lenses for the Sony E mount as well as the L mount. But the L mount is supposed to be a, quote unquote first party mount for Sigma. So I would like to see some more exclusives from Sigma to show that they're really serious about the L mount. I really think that Sigma should be introducing some very specific lenses to the L mount. Not saying they can't still introduce stuff to, Sony E mount, but I just think that, I think the L mount does need some more lenses, and it would be great to see Blackmagic join. I really do think that it's probably the best mount for them to join. I can't see them joining Nikon. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. Nikon has some great cameras, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know, they're just not the first brand I think that people think of when it comes to filmmaking, even though you could make great content with whatever camera you have. I just don't see the market going for, Nikon glass on a Blackmagic camera. I definitely see a crossover between filmmakers in the Lumix space, because I think a lot of Lumix users have that interest in anamorphic shooting, and I think that kind of aligns itself a little bit more with like Blackmagic shooters as well. So it kind of makes sense from a marketing perspective and just knowing their customers. I think it kind of it just makes a lot more sense. So in other news, it looks like we're going to be having an announcement for the Sony A6700, which is pretty interesting because the Sony A6700 is a camera that I think should have been released like a year ago. Sony has really not done much with their APS-C line, besides obviously the Sony FX30, which is a great camera. But I think that the APS-C line is really suffering in terms of just the fact that there's nothing really out there for a prosumer. Most of those cameras, all of those cameras besides the FX30 only shoot 8-bit. They really aren't used in professional settings. None of them have dual SD card slots. I think that, if Sony's looking to really compete with Canon, I think they're probably going to be gunning after the Canon R7 with the Sony A6700. I mean, at least that's how I look at it. I think that it's definitely going to obviously have the Z mount battery. Z battery. I think it's going to have dual SD card slots, like I said before. I do think it's going to have 4K 60. It supposedly is going to be using the same sensor as the Sony FX30, which is that 26 megapixel sensor. But I don't think it's going to shoot 4K 120. I do think it'll shoot 4K 60, and it'll shoot 10-bit video, but I think with the heating issues on those smaller APS-C style bodies, it's not going to be able to shoot 4K 120. Like, think about this. The FX30 has that active cooling from the Sony FX3, whereas the Sony, whatever body the Sony A6700 uses, if it's trying to retain that compact nature of the APS-C line, I just don't see 4K 120 being a viable recording mode in that body. But I could be wrong. I do think that maybe they could make it a little bit more modeled after like the Sony A7C, and maybe that might help. But I don't know, I doubt it. I think this is going to be geared more towards photographers. And I do also find it interesting, like where this camera lines up in Sony's APS-C line in terms of, cost and price for somebody that's interested in getting one of these cameras, because I think it's probably going to sit around the $1,500 mark, maybe $1,400 mark, because the FX30 you can get for, I believe, $1,799 without the XLR mount. So unless you're really just buying it for photos, I don't know why you wouldn't just jump up to the FX30 if it's $1,500. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. The pricing is going to be a little weird. I think there's going to be some things that set it apart from the FX30. At least I would assume that. But who knows? I mean, we'll find out in the next couple of days. I'm really excited to see what they announce. And supposedly there's going to be a couple more lenses that are going to be announced with it as well. But I guess we'll have to wait to see what takes place. But yeah, what else? Oh, I expect the AF, the autofocus is going to be excellent, just like the Sony ZV-E1. The Sony A7R5 is going to have the AI autofocus and tracking and all those crazy features. So I mean, that's a given. Those are just my thoughts and what I think about the the announcement, not announcement, the rumors of Blackmagic potentially joining the L-mount alliance, and curious to see what happens with the Sony A6700. But I'm curious about your thoughts. Like, what do you think about Blackmagic joining the L-mount alliance? Do you think it's a good move on Blackmagic's part? Do you think that you'd be interested in getting a Blackmagic Design L-mount camera? And what do you think about the Sony A6700? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.